Hi everyone, today's lesson will be on figure and number patterns. Now what do we learn in this lesson? We'll learn how to solve word problems involving figure and number patterns. Let's look at example 1 in Visible Thinking Max, page 49. Now in this case, the table below shows you the different pattern numbers and also the number of sticks for each pattern. Now, what do you observe about the difference in the number of sticks? Okay, you realize that the difference is equal, right? It's always 2 sticks. We started with 3 and it increased to 5 and 7. So there's a additional 2 for each pattern number. Now, so in this case, how do you find the number of sticks for pattern 4? We're going to use repeated addition to do this. So we have 3 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2. So you can find that the number of sticks for pattern 4 is 9. Okay. Now, what about pattern 10? You realize that it's not going to be easy if you apply the same strategy that you used just now to find the number of sticks in pattern 10, because the process is going to be very tedious. So in this case, we are supposed to find a pattern, okay, so that we have this rule that we can apply to find pattern 10 or even pattern 20. So in this case, you realize that actually from pattern 1 to pattern 5, there are actually 4 intervals. Okay, 4 intervals. So the number of intervals between any pattern number and pattern 1 is 1 less than the pattern number. So we can say that for pattern number minus 1 is always equals to my number of intervals. Now what do I mean by here? For example, if pattern number is 4, if you use 4 minus 1, you will get 3. So number of intervals is 3. Okay, so what is the pattern rule for finding the number of sticks in this case? We will use the number of intervals, okay, which we can find, and we multiply by 2 plus 3, which is the initial number of sticks that we have. Okay, so applying this rule for pattern number 10, we realize that we can actually find the number of sticks in pattern 10. So first of all, let's find the number of intervals in pattern 10. So we have pattern number 10 minus 1, so the number of intervals is 9. And 9 times 2, you will get 18. And 18 plus 3, you will get 21. So there are actually 21 sticks in pattern number 10. So you do likewise for pattern 20. You can now start trying this in your worksheet. You can pause the video. Now let's move on to example 2, which is on page 54 of your Visible Thinking Max. Now in this case, the pattern number is also from 1 to 20, and we are talking about the number of pens found in the different number patterns. Now in this case, what do you observe about the difference in the number of pens? Okay, in this case, you realize that the difference is equal. It is always 2 pens. Okay, 50, 48, 46. But this one is different from example 1 because for this example, there is a decrease of 2 for each pattern. So how do you find the number of pens for pattern 4? Okay, this time round we will use repeated subtraction. We have 50 minus 2 minus 2 minus 2. So in this case, we will get 44 pens for pattern number 4. Now, as mentioned, it's going to be very tedious if you were to go on doing this for pattern 10 and above. So in this case, based on the relationship between the pattern numbers and the number of intervals, pattern number minus 1, you will get the number of intervals. Okay, so how do you find the number of pens? So in this case, the rule for finding this will be 50 minus the number of intervals multiply by 2. Okay, example, if you want to find pattern 10, so how do you find the number of intervals for pattern 10? So you have 10 minus 1, which is 9 intervals. So in this case, we will use 9 times 2, and you will get 18. And 50 minus 18, you will get 32. So there are actually 32 pens in pattern 10. Okay, you may want to try on your own to find pattern 20 by pausing the video. Now let's look at the last example, example 3, which is found on page 57 of your Visible Thinking Max. Now this is a very interesting pattern because you can see that there's an increase in the number of tiles, okay, in the pattern number, but the increment is not a +2 or a -2. Instead, you realize that the difference keeps increasing from 3 tiles to 5 tiles and 7 tiles. And you also realize that there is something interesting about this number of tiles. Okay, now pattern 1 you have 1 tile, pattern 2 you have 4 tiles, pattern 3 you have 9 tiles. You realize that actually pattern 1 tile, you can actually get it from 1 times 1. For pattern 2, 4 tiles is actually 2 times 2. Pattern 3 tiles is 3 times 3. Now what do you realize about these numbers here? These are actually the pattern numbers. So how do you find the number of tiles for pattern 4? So you have 4 times 4, which will give you 16 tiles. Okay, now so how do we carry on to find out pattern 8 and pattern 20? Is there any pattern rule? So our pattern rule is actually the pattern number, okay, the pattern number multiplied by the pattern number. So in this case, if we want to find pattern 8, it will be 8 times 8, which will give you 64. And pattern 20 will be 20 times 20, which will be 400 tiles. Okay, that's the end of the lesson. Now please do some reflections in your worksheet about figure and number patterns that you still have or you think your friends may have. Thank you.